Greetings and welcome to the Morningstar Report. On this historic day, the Summer Solstice of 2026, I have a special guest with me today. His name is Clint Montgomery. And my purpose here is to invite you to an event that is happening today. And this is an invitation to a public meeting of the Constitutional Militia organization being held in New York City today, Sunday, June 21st, 2026, at the Ideal Glass Studio, 9 West 8th Street, New York, New York. The meeting is to address the need for greater public education in the principles and tenets of the US Constitution, and it is sponsored by Mr. Montgomery, who is the president of Sublation Publishing Company. To commemorate the summer solstice, I presented at 12 noon the three prophecies of George Washington's vision at Valley Forge, and I will be performing that, playing that later on in the program and tomorrow night on the Monday night show. So with no further ado, let me welcome Clint Montgomery to tell us about the Constitutional Militia organization and the movement. I have many deep thoughts about it and how important it is historically, recent history, as a matter of fact. So, Clint, thank you for being with me on the Morningstar Report on this momentous day.
Robert, I'm very honored to be speaking with you, and I am very much looking forward to the three prophecies of George Washington, because the Constitutional Militia started before we had a written constitution.
That's right.
What we had was the natural liberties of humankind, and those were put into words as life, liberty, property, the right to self-defense, the right to bear arms, the right to not be tried without cause, the right to, in short, the pursuit of happiness. And these natural rights were enshrined in the British Constitution until the British government lost the ball. And the British colonists of North America never just set out to say, hey, I'm going to go found my own country. They saw America as a second chance for mankind, where these natural rights and liberties could finally find expression away from all of the war and barbarism and tyranny of the entire Asiatic, Euro-African landmass.
Interesting that you say that, because that is exactly what George Washington speaks about in the vision that he had in 1777. He was taken up and he was given a vision of America and its future. And we can talk about that a little bit more later. But the Magna Carta was an incredible document, and it was, again, the nobles of England forced human rights out of the King of England, King John, who had become a tyrant in the absence of Richard III, Richard the Lionhearted, who was off in the Crusades. And it's interesting that I once saw a chart of George Washington's genealogy, and he was descended from 11 nobles who were at Runnymede forcing the king to sign the Magna Carta. It's a very interesting, very rare document that I saw about 25 years ago, and I've never forgotten it. So tell us about the modern militia, constitutional militia movement, and why you promote it, why you espouse it, as do I. Gee,
So a lot of history happens in between Lexington and Concord
yes,
and Waco. There's
right,
a lot of history in between these events.
yes,
And what's remarkable is that regular people, truckers, plumbers, electricians, regular people still believed in, still remembered, still felt that passion for liberty.
true. Waco should never have happened. An enlightened public, a sense of community, they should have been protected. I saw that from beginning to end, and it was one of the worst crimes the United States government has ever committed. Ruby Ridge was another one, and they tried to do it at the Bundy Ranch, and what saved the day was a local militia that saved
Yeah.
the Bundys. And that is something that we should remember and we should emphasize. Uh, that was a crime in the making, and the militia rode to the rescue. I shall never forget it.
Yeah.
Back to you.
I mean, Robert, I would actually be very much interested also in your experience and your wisdom as to what has happened since Lexington and Concord, since the signing of the Declaration and the institution of the Constitution, that that like the that the US government could be something that has gone awry in the
Absolutely.
same way that the British government did.
And absolutely. And in a nutshell, I'll tell you this. A coup d'etat was conducted in 1963. The rightful president of the United States was murdered, publicly executed, and then a plot unfolded to hoodwink the populace, to fool the American people in perpetuity. And this has to do with a cancer on the US government, which is the national security state. And this national security state was born in 1947 as a result of cosmic events. We are at a critical point, a turning point in the history of America right now, with the revelations of the JFK files, the UFO files, and the quandary of the Congress that can't make any headway. The group that's in charge of extracting the UFO files and the group that's in charge of extracting the JFK files can't move forward.
Mm-hmm.
But they're stuck in a double bind situation. If they expose all the JFK files, they will reveal the reality of UFOs and the alien presence that is dominating the secret government. And if they reveal the UFO files, they will expose the fact that the United States government murdered President Kennedy and a long string of other good people who were fighting for a constitutional democracy, the republic for which we stand. And that's why I feel that what you're doing and what I'm doing, patriots have to stand up for constitutional rights, because the Constitution is what defines us as Americans. Without the Constitution, there are no Americans. And the New World Order, which is its real name, took over the US government through the CIA in 1950, actually. That I can be very specific about when it invaded the intelligence community and hijacked it. And they have been trying to force global socialism, communism on the whole world. And communism and the US Constitution are antithetical. There is no compromise, there is no comparison. And so we have to reclaim the republic. And that's why you're here, and that's why I'm here. I'll give
So
more.
what was George Washington's first prophecy?
Well, it was the revolution itself, spanning, being and succeeding, and then the growth of the United States and its people from coast to coast, what is called manifest destiny. So that was the first one. The first crisis was the Revolutionary War, and
So
he saw it succeed, and he saw it's a very beautiful vision. He saw myriad towns and cities growing and people living harmoniously until the United States went from coast to coast. Then he saw the Civil War, and then he saw the third threat, which I'll relate to you later.
So I think that what we are trying to ask with the conference on Sunday and with the kinds of events, organizings that we're trying to do is what happened such that the government became a socialist communist tyranny. How did the US government become that? And then secondly, with the militias in the 90s, they rose and then they fell.
Yes.
And then 2001 happened, the Patriot Act. I mean, and that just sort of paved the way for the COVID state. So we're working through a history of defeats that we need to take stock of.
Well, the word is false flags. You see, false flags have been used to manipulate the American people and our consciousness uh, long before 9/11. As a matter of fact, one of the things that is driving me is that I received a warning on May 21st of this year of impending false flag attacks. And these false flag attacks are being orchestrated by enemies of the United States within and without. Robert Kennedy wrote a book. I always keep it at arm's reach. It's called The Enemy Within. But then we have the enemy without, which is communism in many forms. I tell people that communism is a vile snake that sheds its skin regularly and molts a new skin and presents itself as a new thing. People are skeptical. People are blindsided, tunnel vision, and they do not see the menace. They don't see the threat. I'm warning people about what has happened in Europe and more close to home, Canada. Folks, if you think it can't happen here, just look across the border at what happened to Canada under Justin Trudeau and Mark Carney. Canada has been overrun by communism. They have banned the Bible. The Bible cannot be read or quoted in public. They are limiting people's freedom of assembly. They are limiting people's mobility. They are instituting 15-minute cities eventually. That's their goal. That's the goal of the New World Order, is to herd all of us into a finite space and forbid free travel. And the US Constitution did away with all of that. That's why we have the greatest country in the world. We don't have passports between the states. But in Canada, more or less, they do. They have tariffs between the states. Products that Alberta creates or makes cannot be sold freely in Quebec. It is pure, unadulterated communism. And the vocabulary of communism has wheedled its way into our vocabulary. And I'm adamant that we have to stop embracing the jargon, the lingo of communism. more and more people, particularly among Democrats, you'll hear the words, the masses, the collective, the proletariat. That's not American English. I say, I am not a member of the collective. I am a member of the public. I am not a member of the masses. I am a member of the union. I am not a proletarian. I am a citizen. I also say, I'm a nudist, not a Buddhist. I'm a Taoist, not a Maoist. I'm an eagle, not a beagle. So insert a little humor into a serious. Okay. And let me say, we're laughing right now because one of my idols and my ideals as a writer is Mark Twain. And Mark Twain said that no tyranny, no dogma, no orthodoxy can stand up against the power of laughter. So back to you, Clint.
I mean, we were talking beforehand about what's going on in London.
Yes.
And you had Novak and then Belfast.
Yes.
And Reform has basically split into Restore. And Restore is now the one that's really carrying the torch on the liberties of Britain.
They are not free. They have no liberties. They're all being herded. Their intention is to put the Caucasian race on reservations. Let me be very frank. And
Yeah.
I exposed a friend and I, my friend Patrick O'Carroll, a very, very patriotic Irishman, notified me in 2016, and it was, I think it's one of the most important things I ever did. Patrick O'Carroll wrote to me and he alerted me to the existence of something called the Kalergi Plan. I didn't know it existed. And then he educated me and I published an article about Agenda 2030 and 21 of the United Nations. And he said, this is going back to the 1920s, a book called Pan-Europa.
Yeah.
Pan-Europa was written by Richard Coudenhove Kalergi, and he hated the Caucasian race. He was Japanese and Jewish, and he wanted to create a European Union. Pan-Europa is the basis of the European Union, and in it he called for the demolition of borders, forced migration, and forced marriage between Asiatics, Africans, and Caucasians in order to eliminate the Caucasian race. Hard to believe, but go to the internet, find a copy. There are PDF copies of Pan-Europa by Richard Coudenhove Kalergi. And that is the plan and has been the plan since the end of World War II. And that is what we are beating back. Thank God that President Trump has secured the borders, because Londonistan and Iran has expanded the reach of radical Islam, and replacement theory is a core principle of the New World Order. I read about these things with incredulity. In 1969, I inherited a library of a PhD professor at the University of Wisconsin, and one of the books in there was called The Report from Iron Mountain. And in the report from Iron Mountain was proposing this New World Order economy, and to build up the third world, Americans would have to be brought down, that we would have to offshore our industry in order to make products overseas. We would have to control world wars by conducting brush fire wars, and that there inevitably would be conflict, because while there are limited resources. Land and water are the limited resources. And as time goes by and the populations grow, more and more people would be vying for these limited resources. So they had this plan. It's called the Report from Iron Mountain, and everything that they talked about, the impoverishment of the American people from the high point that we had in the 1950s and 60s to the critical situation we face today. That was all planned by the New World Order. And the New World Order is the CIA. And I can expound on that, but I'm here to.
I don't know, where does it come from?
The New World Order comes from a book written by H.G. Wells, the famous author of the, the War of the Worlds and the Shape of Things to Come. And he was an ardent socialist, communist. And he proposed the need for world government in 1938 based on socialism. Well, it was embraced by the aristocracy in England and the Eastern elite in America. And they thought this is a great idea. The most intelligent people should rule the world. And so they embarked on a plan to create H.G. Wells' vision of the New World Order. But World War II came and went. It devastated Europe and the rest of the world. And afterwards, they said, well, you know, we have to rebuild the world. Now's the time to bring in the New World Order.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That's where the United Nations was chartered in 1946 in San Francisco. And it was attended by two young reporters. One was John F. Kennedy, a war hero, and then another one was Cord Meyer, Eastern elite, um, Ivy League educated, East Coast Brahmins, they used to call them. And he was there, and both of them had political ambitions. And President to be John F. Kennedy ran for Congress in 1946, and he won his election. And Cord Meyer was arrogant enough to believe that he could go from a captain in the US Marines to US president in 1948 as the head of a party called the World Federalist Party. And he ran in 1948 and he lost badly because Americans didn't want communism, didn't want socialism. And Harry Truman eked out an election over Thomas Dewey. However, being the loser he was, he had to get a new job. And in 1950, Allen Dulles of the CIA enlisted him, recruited him into the CIA, and put him in charge of the MK Ultra mind control program. And that's how we.
I see. I see.
That is the path that's led us here. I'm going to send you an article, lengthy article, detailing all of this and how intimately related this is to the establishment of Israel, because all of it is one, as we used to say, one ball of wax. Yes, it is. And people don't know that the word Nazi, N-A-Z-I, the N-A stands for National Socialist, the Z-I stands for Zionism. So
yeah.
we're amalgamated. And Hitler, when he first came to power, had no funding, no money. And the Zionists said, well, you know, you have the same goal that we have. You want the Jews out of Germany, and we want the Jews out of Germany too. We want our own country. And they'd been working on that since the Balfour Declaration in 1916. So Zionism supported Hitler, propped him up. They had an agreement called the Havara Agreement. The transfer agreement is another name for it, and you can find it on Wikipedia. And so Hitler allowed German Jews to migrate to Palestine, but they couldn't take their property or their money with them. Instead, he gave them vouchers whereby they could use that as money to buy German products when they were in Palestine. And that is how Hitler helped create the state of Israel. And the mentality of those German Jews who migrated to found Israel is National Socialism.
Right.
There you have it in a nutshell.
So looking back at looking back at your own life
Yes.
and look, because, we are trying to help young people wake up to the need to restore the Constitution.
Absolutely.
What were the biggest challenges that you saw? How did you come along this journey?
Well, the first thing was I was well educated in the 1950s, and each of us in our classrooms were taught the US Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and the importance of individuality. That is another thing that this communist mystique, again, the masses, the collective, those words, it's a hive mind, hive mentality. But when I was growing up, I was taught that our individuality was the greatest contribution that we could make to our country, that each of our individual skills and talents freely expressed and fully developed would be the greatest contribution that we could make to our country. Secondly, when I was a boy in grammar school, I joined the Sea Cadets, and I had wonderful mentors. And so basically, I like to say I've been Navy all my life. And I was warned. Imagine this, Clint. In 1959, I was 11 years old. I was taken into a room at my Sea Cadet meeting, and our captain, Captain Peter Luthi, who had been with the Office of Naval Intelligence, was in a very, very serious state of mind. We didn't have the normal drills. We didn't have the normal training. He took us into a room and he said, "Gentlemen, we, the US Navy, want you to go home and tell your parents, to warn your parents about something that the Office of Naval Intelligence has discovered. We have discovered that the mafia intends to take over the US government." All of us were shocked. And I said, "Captain Luthi, how can they do that?" He said, "Bob, we've discovered that we have many corrupt politicians in the Congress. And the mafia has bribed them, and they are planning to take over the US government. We want you to go and tell your parents this and warn them about this plan against the country." And I'm in shock. So I said, "Captain Luthi, what are we to do if they take over the country?" And he looked at me very seriously and he said, "Bob, your first duty and obligation will be to your family and yourself. You must ensure that you survive. And then you must do everything in your power to help restore constitutional government in the United States." And he made us all take a vow to do that. And the reason is that the Office of Naval Intelligence had been tracking the corrupt politicians, and they knew about a meeting that had happened in upstate New York called the Appalachian meeting, where all these mobsters arrived. And the meeting was recorded because a very alert New York State trooper who knew these mafiosos saw them all arriving at this motel. He said, "Something's going on, Look at all these guys, mobsters from all around the country are arriving at this hotel in Appalachian, New York." So the Navy and the FBI at that time got together and they recorded the plot to install a corrupt politician as president of the United States. And that man turned out to be Lyndon Baines Johnson. And he's the one who inveigled us into Vietnam. He's the one that hijacked the Social Security Fund to pay for Vietnam. And he's the one that opened the borders to Muslim migration into the United States. Before 1964, Muslims were not allowed to migrate to the United States because the Quran is incompatible with the US Constitution. Just off the bat, the Quran allows and encourages cruel and unusual punishment. It also allows polygamy, and it also allows legalized prostitution. And the third and fourth things that are the worst are the Quran calls for Muslims to overthrow the governments of any country in which they live, to impose Sharia law and to impose Islamic government. Now, there's a warning. There's the sounds of New York City. But let me say this. In 1999, I read a document called Unrestricted Warfare, written by two Chinese colonels. And these two Chinese colonels advocated secret war against the United States. And they came up with this concept of broadband warfare. They said that in order for China to catch up with the United States, at that time it was 30 years behind the times. They wanted to catch up in 10 years. And they said, we have to wage war against the United States on every level. Economic, military, social, psychological. And in reading that document, I saw them advise the government to conduct a false flag attack on the United States, and specifically to bring down a target that was both economic, political, and psychological. And they said the World Trade Center would be a wonderful target. And we could use a third party like the Bin Laden organization to do so. Well, my mind was blown in 1999. And I said, we don't have a word for this thing. I have to coin a word. I called it communism. And I started using that word, and people were criticizing me. Robert, that's radical, that's racist, that's extreme. And then 9/11 happened. And people called me and said, Robert, you were right. Well, I was more right than anyone knows. Because in 2002, from his cave in Afghanistan, Osama bin Laden issued a fatwa, which is a religious order. And I memorized it. It was in BBC News, and English News carried it. And the quote is this: Osama bin Laden said, I urge all members of the Ummah to support communist revolutions wherever they may occur, because communism and Islam are the same thing, unquote. There you have it. And that's a history lesson in a nutshell. So I support everything you're doing. We have to recapture, restore the Constitution. I have confidence now that we are back on the right track of history. But I am warning people to stay alert, to be circumspect, because I am expecting the enemy within and the enemy without to try to spoil our celebration of the 250th anniversary of our nation. Back to you, Clint.
I think the crucial thing that you were being taught in the 1950s is the same thing that young people need to learn today.
Yes.
That they can be individuals, that it's up to them, that they have to try and figure it out on their own.
Yes.
And that the Constitution is what is safeguarding that possibility.
Well, I agree completely. What do you tell us about your programs? I guess it's an outreach program, and many young people are responding. Young people were hoodwinked, and they know they were hoodwinked. During the Obama-Biden period. The Biden period for me was the worst period of my life.
Yeah.
No qualms about saying that. I thought we almost lost the country. I have never seen more corruption and more perversity than I saw during those 4 terrible years.
Yeah.
The terrible thing was I could see it so clearly, but people have been so dumbed down that they just couldn't see it. But the young people woke up. You know, the COVID lockdowns, the mandates, the forced vaccinations. I recognize the first week when the vaccine was released and Pfizer put out its animations of how messenger RNA worked. I said, that's AIDS. I've been studying AIDS since 1979 and how
Yeah.
AIDS unfolded. And I said, this is AIDS. AIDS invades the body with an RNA molecule. They're calling it mRNA for messenger. And we don't know what the message is. What did they put in there? Well, now we know.
Yeah.
Turbo cancers, rubber blood clots, all kinds of things. It's the greatest crime in the history of humanity. But at last, the nation is waking up. And you're doing it. I'm doing it. Our networks are doing it. Revolution Radio is doing it. I call our program on Revolution Radio the torrent of truth. And I think that that's what you are doing too. So tell us more about the program.
So the program is geared towards a baseline New York audience, a New York sensibility. Because remember, New York City has long been the Tory capital in America.
Yeah.
Now, the Patriots did win
Yes.
in New York.
Yes.
So it's a series of panels. It's a discussion. And we're bringing together various perspectives. And the idea with these discussions is to introduce young people to the depth of the problem, and also to inspire them to start thinking about for themselves what it would mean to actually take up the legacy of 1776.
Yes.
So the first panel is the American Revolution liberal? Because a lot of people say it is, and I think that there's a difference between conservative liberalism, where liberalism just originally meant freedom,
Exactly.
and progressive liberalism, where progressive liberalism means the state should figure things out for you. So this is getting at the question of what liberalism means. The second panel just asks straight up, is America still a republic? In what sense, yes. In what sense, no. Because many good people would say, well, the elites control everything. Is it really a republic if the elites control everything? If the people are totally hoodwinked, sheepled, can you really call it a republic anymore?
No.
And other good people would say, no, it is still a republic. There are still the fighting spirits of liberty, history, individuality, the meaning of this ongoing flame. So that second panel just asks it outright. And the third panel is, what is the meaning of 1776 and its Constitution today? So it broadens it out.
It's an admirable goal. So the Constitutional Militia is a national network, would you say? You have chapters in different states?
Well, we are not ourselves the Constitutional Militia. We are trying to introduce young people to what the 1990s Constitutional Militia was.
Well, it is interesting, folks. Whenever people hear militia nowadays, it's been so denigrated and twisted into its opposite. It's almost an outlaw organization the way people think of it because of the propaganda that was exercised against the idea. But it is written in the Constitution.
It's the fabric of it.
It's the fabric. If I may, let me just read a short passage. I went to the Constitutional Militia website and brought it out. So I would like to find it right now. Just here we go. Very, very short definition. Constitutional militia. Americans have fallen into a dangerous fallacy in the contemporary, quote unquote, individual right only misinterpretation of the Second Amendment. The Supreme Court's Heller decision reduced America's right of the people to keep and bear arms to a level far below what their forebears enjoyed when the Constitution and Bill of Rights were ratified. A revitalized militia of the several states, which is a statement directly from the Constitution, could, should, and if they were properly revitalized, would deal with many of the most pressing contemporary problems this country faces, such as the correction of rogue public officials, the supervision of the military-industrial complex, the conduct of honest election, and the provision of an alternative currency, to name a few. Folks, you can read about it more on this website. It's called constitutionalmilitia.org. And I'd like to give you one instance, very important instance. After World War II, soldiers who had fought in the United States military came home to Athens, Tennessee, to find that during their absence, a corrupt sheriff, a corrupt mayor, and a gangster organization had taken over the town and were oppressing the people. They organized a militia. They arrested the sheriff. They arrested the mayor. They called the governor. The governor sent in the National Guard, and they cleaned up the place. That is how militias were meant by the US Constitution to operate.
And that's we want people to recognize that this is what they're empowered to do by their own natural rights and liberties.
Absolutely.
And people, young people, have never been told this.
No, they've been.
We live in a society where it's assumed that your power lies in the state.
I wrote this morning, warning. I'm warning Canadians. I tell my Canadian friends I've had Canadian co-hosts and for many years, and one actually moved to Korea to get away from the situation in Canada as it stands. The other one lives in British Columbia, and I've been warning them about the takeover of Canada by radical communists ever since I saw Justin Trudeau around 2016 say that he really greatly admired the Chinese Communist Party for having been able to turn the country around on a dime. And I just recognized him as I don't know if you know the term, red diaper baby.
Yeah.
He's a red diaper baby. Obama was a red diaper baby. And Joe Biden was a red diaper baby. These are children who were raised communist from the cradle. And I was saying the only entity that can save Canada and the few freedoms that they still retain is Alberta. And so I'm on the move to convince Albertans that they have to secede, whether they become a part of the United States or not, or a territory, but they have to declare independence in the same way that we declared independence in 1776. So I was writing to them because of the atrocious behavior of Justin Trudeau and Mark Carney, not the least of which was the slaughter of 400 ostriches that didn't have to be killed. Yeah. But communism rules by terrorism. by making people afraid, by cowing people. And that was one of the main reasons for that slaughter of those ostriches. There was no basis in fact for the culling of that herd. And the Revolution Radio audience knows we tried our best, and we our best to save them. But we have to save the Canadian people now, because do you know that Canada has executed, killed 75,000 people under something called the MAID program?
Yeah.
Medical assistance in dying.
Yeah.
And they're trying to push that here in the United States. They have no respect for human life. And that is a hallmark of communism. I urge everyone to look up something called the 9 treatises on the Chinese Communist Party. It was written by a man who left the Chinese Communist Party, and he's got 9 essays. And the one that stands out most in my mind is the Chinese Communist Party is anti-God and anti-nature.
Yeah.
Basically, it's Lucifer. Okay? That is what we're up against. Don't kid yourself. The Epstein files reveal what they really worship. And they worship money and a god named Baal, a fire god. They worship Lucifer. They are Luciferians. I'm not pulling any punches, and I can give you the entire history of how Luciferism went from Islam into Judaism. From Judaism, it infiltrated the Christianity through Christian Zionism and the Catholic Church. So it's basically taken over all the world's great religions and is festering right beneath the surface. But I can see it and I can explain it. Back to you. The cult of intelligence, okay, right?
Yeah.
The intelligence state. They worship intelligence. And what is that? Luciferism.
Well, it was the tree of knowledge.
Wasn't it? Exactly. Exactly. You will know the difference between good and evil, but they also push another fallacy. And I explained this to a German. He was shocked. I said, the problem with the German people comes from Faust, who made a deal. The premise is that freedom of choice and free will can only be exercised by choosing evil. And I said, that's not true. You are equally free. Your will is equally free to choose good. And that's where Faust, the way they interpret Faust, messed up the Germans. And I said to this German, I said, look, free will can be exercised in either way. You can choose to do good or you can choose to do evil. It's not by choosing evil that you're exercising free will alone. And he went, but here's the actual greater corruption. If you really read Faust or see the 1920s movie, at the end of the story, Faust feels remorse and he begs forgiveness of Maria. And he embraces her in the flames and they both die in love. And then when Mephistopheles comes to take his soul, Michael the archangel comes out of heaven and grabs him by the neck. He says, no, you lost. You lost. Love conquers all. God forgives all. And love is the way. And that has been deleted from every telling of Faust that I've seen since the 1940s. They make the devil win the bargain. But the real Faust, Michael the archangel, takes Satan and Mephistopheles by the neck and he said, no, you lost the game, brother. You know, love redeems us. And that's what we have to restore. George Washington, in his farewell address, talked about the importance of keeping up the gentle disposition and friendliness of the American character. but it's been corrupted and twisted into hostility, you know,
Distrust.
tribalism, group hatreds, political hatreds. Well, go on.
No, no, I think, I mean, that is profound.
Yes, I recommend it to you, Clint.
That
Find
that the archangel is actually the one to come in, and
Wow,
Faust actually,
you have
because this is the story that Faust chooses the bargain with the devil, and that's the rest of history.
yeah, and
That's what you learn in the universities.
that's right.
That's what the entire establishment of science and the military industrial complex, the way that young people that's what they're fed through Instagram.
Yes,
This is the common sense now. It's not Thomas Paine's common sense.
right.
It's Mephistocles.
Thomas Paine funded the American Revolution with his book Common Sense.
Yeah.
You know, he sold so many copies that he contributed it all to the revolution. I'll tell you something else. Thomas Paine was a member of the ancient Druid order of England, and he tried to overthrow the king uh,
Yeah.
along with Henry Adams, and they failed, and they had to flee to America. And it's uh, it's amazing. I studied with the Druid Order from 1995 through 2002, and I very closely related to them. And I found out that the architecture, the governance of the Druid Order is the model for the United States government. When I met when I met the chief Druid, I said they honored me with a certain um, honor. They elected me presider of it for this summer ceremony in 1997, where I played King Arthur. And I was privileged to draw the sword from the stone in this ritual. So I said to the chief druid, have there ever been any other Americans that have been honored by the Druid Order? And I was thinking recent times. He called me up when I came back to the States. He called me up and said, Robert, I've been looking at the records of the Druid Order, and I found a few Americans who were attended meetings. And I said, oh, really? Who? He said, well, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, and Thomas Paine was the Pendragon of the Druid Order. And I don't know if you know, but the Druid Order has the chief, or the archdruid, it has the scribe, and it has the Pendragon. The chief is the president, the scribe is the legislature, and the Pendragon is the judge.
Uh,
Then there are 9 positions, administrative positions, and that the whole cabinet and the tripartite government is all based on this. And they were definitely um, anti-monarchy. You know, they were part of the people who forced King John to sign the Magna Carta. And I can assure you, folks, it's not satanic. It's been denigrated like every other good thing. The propaganda ministry tries to twist everything into its opposite. The government is incapable of telling us the truth since 1963, and even before that. The first false flag we really suffered was the dastardly attack at Pearl Harbor, because Franklin Roosevelt and the Secretary of State Cordell Hull knew that the attack was coming, and they
mm,
did not warn them. I'm warning them. I'm warning you, warning all of us. We have enemies within, we have enemies without. Oh, yes, the Titanic didn't sink. The Olympics sunk. They switched ships and they insured it for more than twice the worth of the ship. And we've proven, my friends and I, marine architects and the researchers, that ship at the bottom of the Atlantic is the RMS Olympic and not the Titanic. But that became the model for the destruction of the World Trade Centers and the insuring of the World Trade Center for much more than they were worth. That's another story, though. So, okay, we're coming to the end of the program. Would you like to say anything, closing remarks? We can go longer.
I just want to say, Robert, thank you. We are trying to bring the generations together and to deal with how Lucifer is actually appearing now amongst young people
Oh, yes.
and addressing it head on and with the words that they understand.
Yes.
So I am just thankful that you gave me the time to tell me these things.
This is our first time, and I will welcome you back in the future, and we'll see each other later.
It will be my honor, Robert.
Thank you very much. Okay, folks, you've been listening to Clint Montgomery and our support for constitutional militias and educating the not just young people, old people have forgotten the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and I say it again, and I will say it till my dying day. Without the U.S. Constitution, there are no Americans. So with that, I leave you, and join us tomorrow. Stay tuned for the station break, but I will repeat this program tomorrow night, and I will keep bringing this message and the torrent of truth to you. Have a good day. I salute you. Thank you.